Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. BAM Weather. Meteorologist Brett Waltz here, giving you a Dakota's local forecast update. Wanted to give you all the latest details on the severe weather threat for today. In fact, we've actually got a couple of days in the forecast where there could be some severe weather. Starting off, though, you can see some light rain working across eastern parts of South Dakota near Aberdeen, some very light rain working towards the Brookings and Mitchell area. Not a big deal for the most part, but I do think that this continues to push off to the east throughout the day today. So if you're in northeastern parts of the area, I think that this morning you're probably going to deal with some rain before we go into some quiet time ahead of what will be a severe weather threat as we work into this evening. So you can see that most of this rain works out probably by the time we work into 1 or 2 o'clock. Then we start to develop some showers and storms across southwestern parts of North Dakota as we work into this afternoon. So again, 2, 3 o'clock, I think that things really begin to explode. Initially, these storms could come with a hail threat, and I think that as they start to push off to the south, a bigger tornado threat could develop. Now, even up here, there's an isolated tornado threat, but I think the best threat is just down to your south as these storms start to get more organized. With that being said, look, this first area of storms develops into a cluster. You can kind of see the bowing of this line of storms across south central North Dakota, north central and northwestern South Dakota as we work into this afternoon and this evening. This is by about 4 o'clock. This could produce a damaging wind threat, and you can see that it will continue to push down to the south and to the east as we work throughout the evening hours tonight. So this is towards 7 p.m. You can see that line is still slowly working down to the south and to the east, starting to work towards the Aberdeen area into southeastern parts of North Dakota. And again, a wind threat is certainly on the table there, as well as some hail, tornado being a more isolated threat. Now, I do think that as we get this secondary area of storms to develop across central and south central parts of South Dakota, there is the risk here that initially there could be a decent tornado threat with any of these storms that develop. So that is something to keep in mind. There could be some tornado warnings in this blue circled area that I've outlined here. Now, it also is going to come with a hail threat, and eventually it's going to develop into a downscale wind threat. You can see we start to develop more of that bow signature as it works into southeastern parts of South Dakota. So again, near Sioux Falls there, and then down into the Iowa City area, and then most of this out of the area. This is midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. here, and then most of the storms are out of the area. Maybe some scattered activity lingering into tomorrow morning, but then a lot of the day tomorrow is going to be on the clear side. So here's a look at our day 1 severe weather map. So a good part here of South Dakota is under that slight risk. If I were to change anything here, we may need to include more of the red up into here along the border. So that is something to keep in mind. I think that you may be in that slight risk as well. Regardless, if you're in central and eastern South Dakota, far southern and southeastern North Dakota, you're at play today for a threat of damaging winds, hail, and yes, a couple of tornadoes. The best threat for wind and tornadoes, I think, is going to come in this hatched area. I also think that there could be some very large hail. So all modes of severe weather are on the table. The biggest threat in the hatched area across south central and southern parts of South Dakota. Now, if we look at our total accumulation, now, one thing I want to note, if you recall from our video yesterday, the data doesn't necessarily pick out these storms perfectly. Guys, the sim radar isn't going to be a one-to-one setup, but the general idea here is that we're going to have a cluster of storms that develops out here, maybe a couple of clusters, and they're going to dive down to the south and to the east. There could be splotches. You can see here, the data is trying to see it, that misses out. It's not necessarily one huge uniform line of storms. I'm not super convinced on that. Regardless, any storms that do develop, and it's possible for anyone in this area especially, any storms that develop, I think, have the potential to produce a quick half an inch to locally an inch of rain. But we do have some dry air, so I don't think that's necessarily widespread, but I do think that if you're under rain, I think you've got a pretty solid chance of getting a quarter to a half an inch with a half an inch to an inch in those heavier storms. Now, throughout the rest of the day tomorrow, as I mentioned, I think we have plenty of dry time. We've got not a lot of energy. We start to work in some energy into your Friday evening, maybe a couple of scattered showers or storms. And then as we work into your Saturday ahead of what will be another severe weather chance, I think that we start to work back in some moisture. So if we take a look at our sim radar here, this is by the time we work into your Saturday morning. These won't be severe, but I do think that we start to develop some scattered showers and storms across the western half of the Dakotas by your Saturday morning. And then we kind of have this lingering shower risk across the eastern parts of the area as we work into the afternoon. Now, that's going to be important. How fast the morning convection works out will really determine how the severe weather threat evolves on Saturday. With that being said, the setup is extremely favorable right now for severe weather. If we take a look here, we've got a lot of energy. In fact, you can kind of see those supercells that this upper level energy is trying to see, and I think that that is certainly on the table. We've got a really potent warm front that's going to set up. You can see it. I've drawn it on this map here, and I think that it's along this warm front, along and south, that we are going to have to deal with perhaps a pretty substantial threat of severe weather. Right now, there's already a day 3 enhanced. That's rare. You don't usually get an enhanced risk on day 3. I would not be surprised if this turns into a moderate risk as we work into the next update tomorrow. I really think that that is on the table. If we take a look at our simulated radar, you can see this is by the time we work into 7, 8 o'clock on your Saturday. We've got supercells that are developing across western parts of South Dakota, southwestern North Dakota, right along that boundary. And I think that all modes of severe weather are on the table. Probably initially supercells was very large hail potential, starting to develop into a line of damaging winds as we work across the central Dakotas and into eastern parts of the state. So that is certainly something to keep in mind. I think that it could be a big severe weather day. Now, with that being said, I think that your temperatures on Saturday are across southern South Dakota are in the upper 80s to near 90 degrees. Take a look into Sunday. We are looking at widespread mid to upper 90s across parts of the eastern Dakotas and into Minnesota as we work into your Sunday. So a very hot day, and you can see that front there. I think that Sunday poses another severe weather threat across the eastern Dakotas. And again, that will be Sunday evening. We'll touch more on that in future updates, but just wanted to give you that base idea for now. Did want to mention before we go, Saturday, I think that ahead of all those storms, we could be dealing with some very gusty winds, maybe 35 to 45 miles an hour. Saturday is going to be a very breezy day with those winds shifting to the east as we work into Sunday. Guys, that's all I have for today's forecast. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out, and have a great rest of your day.